Torah Life Ministries come out of the world. Messiah people seek the truth.
Hello everybody, it's Paul Neeson with Torah Life Ministries, and this is this coming week's Torah portion. And if you're not familiar with what that is according to the original covenant, each week there's something called the Torah reading that all the congregations around the world read, and it's what Yeshua Messiah himself taught out of each week, and even Rabbi Saul of Tarsus, otherwise known as the Apostle Paul, taught in congregations and assemblies and churches all over the land that he went. And we are reading the 32nd reading, which is Leviticus 25:1 to 26:2. And we see right here, and remember the last couple of readings or teachings we had, a wonderful Creator gave the instructions of what the people were to follow. Then we saw them give the instructions of what the priest to follow, and both times he followed it up with, if they do not do these things, these are the consequences. So folks, you see there's consequences for us not listening to his word. There's consequences for us for breaking his commands, his instructions, his guidelines. And one of those consequences is a premature death. See, we all have a time where we're going to die, but if we do things that we shouldn't be doing, it could definitely shorten our time that we have here. So there are blessings and curses tied to obedience. So we have to keep that in mind. Well, in this week's teaching in Leviticus 25:2, it says, "Tell the people of Israel." So it says, "A wonderful Creator spoke to Moses on Mount Sinai and said," and then he said, "Tell the people of Israel." And who is Israel? Everyone today that proclaims Yeshua as their Messiah are the believers, and they are Israel today. Back then, it was the people that left Egypt, the people, and one of those tribes was Judah. There was many different tribes that were in the desert. They came out of the desert. After they left Egypt, they wandered around the desert for 40 years. Then they came into the promised land. And the instructions that were given in the desert were the instructions they were to follow when they went into the land that was promised to them, which is the land of the Canaanites. So a wonderful Creator in Leviticus 25:1 continues to tell Moses, tell this to the people. Again, this isn't Moses telling the people these things because he taught them up. This is a wonderful Creator telling Moses to relay this message to the people. In other words, Moses was the messenger. And the problem is the people knew that, but they still had a problem with the message. Well, who was the message coming from? The message was coming from our Creator. So in essence, the people had a problem with our Creator, or with their Creator, or with the Creator. And as we saw, there were consequences for that. But this is what he said. He gave them a whole bunch of instructions now in this reading about the Shabbat and about what it is. And it's the day of rest. But it's not only for us, it's also for the land. And every 7th year, the land was supposed to rest, and the trees that were growing the fruits and the vegetables we weren't supposed to pick anything that year. It was different. He provided what we needed in the 6th year for the 7th year to cover it. Just like when the manna came down, he said, you don't pick it on the 7th day, the 6th day you take enough for 2 days. Well, he gave them the instructions of what exactly this was going to be and how the land needed a Shabbat too. It specifically says here, reiterating what he's saying throughout all of the scriptures in Leviticus 25:2, "Tell the people of Israel, when you enter the land I'm giving you, the land itself is to observe a Shabbat." And it says, "For our wonderful Creator." So this is what's supposed to happen. Now, if we don't do something that he wants us to do, it's still going to happen, but not with us as part of that blessing. So we're going to see in the next reading how it still happened and the land rested. Why? Because the people and their disobedient were kicked out of the land, and the land nobody was around to do anything, so the land got to rest. You see, we have two choices. We could listen to his word, and his plan's going to happen, or we could disobey his word. His plan's going to happen, but we're not going to get the blessings of that plan if we disobeyed his word. So I want to move down here, though, to Leviticus 25:18. Specifically, it says, Leviticus 25:17, "Thus you are not to take advantage of each other, but you are to fear your Creator, for I am him." So we are to fear him, and we are not to take advantage of our fellow brother, of the fellow believer, of the fellow neighbor. We are not, the scriptures tell us over and over again to love our neighbor as they are ourselves. We are not to take advantage of them. But you see, today, that's what's going on. We're disobeying Scripture. Because today, people are taking advantage of their own family, their neighbors, and everyone. But it says right here, you are not to take advantage of each other, but you are to fear our Elohim. So this is what it says in Scripture. But then it says now, what not to do. Do not take advantage of each other. But then it goes and says what to do. It says, rather, and this is in Leviticus 25:18, rather you are to keep my regulations and rulings and act accordingly. So if he's telling us not to take advantage of our fellow brother, of our neighbors, and so on, so acting accordingly is exactly that how, not to take advantage of them. So acting accordingly is to treat them as you would treat yourself. It says, if you do, you will live securely in your land. The land will yield produce you will eat until you have enough, and you will live there securely. So it's telling us if we treat each other with the same respect and we all follow the guidelines and instructions of our Creator, it says we will never run out of food, and the land will continue to give us the food, because one of the things of acting accordingly is keeping the Shabbat that he tells us to keep here, not just for ourselves but for the land as well. But then it says until you've had enough. And so we're filled till we're satisfied, and that's it. But today people are breaking this, and look at the consequence. People are never satisfied. They're always eating, and it just doesn't seem like there's enough food for them. And that is more than enough for their nutritional needs, but it's their spirit that is just not being fed, because they're not looking on the word and being obedient to our wonderful Creator, and they're just empty inside. And they're never satisfied. But he says, if you follow my instructions and guidelines, you act accordingly. Act accordingly is love your neighbor as you love thyself, and you will always securely live in your land. Well, since people are breaking that and they're not listening to his word, what happened today? Well, there's food shortages around the world, but even more specifically, people are not living securely in their land. They are not. That's not what's going on today. So then we go on and we look in the future here. It says in Leviticus 25:35, it says, if a member of your people has become poor so that he can't support himself among you, you are to assist him as you would a foreigner or a temporary resident, so that he can continue living with you. Do not charge him interest, otherwise profit from him, but fear your Creator, so that your brother can continue on living with you. Do not take interest when you loan him money, or take a profit when you sell him food. So we understand he tells us to he tells us to not take advantage of our fellow brother, and then which we saw in the previous verse of 25:17. But then he goes on to tell us, this is how you don't take advantage of him. It says, and then he goes on to say, if one of your members or somebody becomes poor, one of your tribe, one of the people next to you, you don't take advantage of them. And he goes on with those instructions how. So he's given us these instructions, and there are consequences, as I say over and over again, for not listening. And we are suffering today as a nation because we are taking advantage of each other. We are taking advantage and we're disobeying the instructions of our wonderful Creator. Now, we end off this week with, or in this reading, and then we'll get to the next one, which is so full. But this one is Leviticus 26. And Leviticus 26:1 gives something very powerful. In Leviticus 26:1 it says, you are not to make yourself an idol, erect a carved statue or a standing stone, or place carved stone anywhere in your land to bow down to it. So this was the instructions given to us. You are not to do this. Not to make a statue or a structure made of stone or carved from anything and bow down to it. Well, let me just give everybody an example of the new rage that's going on today in the world. This yoga stuff, this crazy yoga stuff. Do you know what yoga is? Yoga is a Middle Eastern religion, belief system, culture where they bow to hundreds of different gods every time they do a different yoga pose. It's happening even in churches today because there's this oxymoron called Christian yoga. And here we're told specifically, you are not to make yourself any idols or carved statues, standing stone, or place any carved stone anywhere in your land and bow down to it. But that's what's happening every day. And it's not only the yoga people, it's the people doing everything. People are continually making idols and bowing down to it. And bowing isn't only bowing on your hands and knees. Bowing to an idol is living as they are your idol. For example, if I have a rock and I say, this rock is my creator or my God, and this rock is everything to me. So I listen to the rock, I do everything that rock says. I might not necessarily bow to it, but I'm bowing to it by submitting to it and putting that rock in a higher esteem than our wonderful creator. And that is the issue, and that's what so many people are doing today. That is the Parashat 32. Until then, everybody, have a great Shabbat next week, and shalom, shalom.
Torah life ministries come out of the world. Messiah people seek the truth.